just talk.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Book Beat. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior, and we've got a great show planned for you today. Our first guest is going to be Dottie Albertine, who designs book covers. So if you are an author in need of a book cover, Dottie, you can learn a lot from what Dottie's going to tell you. She's got some great tips, and it's really good to understand how book cover designers work and how to talk to them. And so we have a real live one in the studio here. And then we have Janine Macklin, a popular guest. This is her second time on the show. And she has written a wonderful book called Let's Get You Happy First. Very important principles in this book. If you are not used to putting yourself first and getting yourself happy first, then Janine has a lot of tips to share. And we have Dr. Carol Lieberman coming on in the third segment. She's a really well-known media expert. She's a psychiatrist, and you see her name all the time whenever reporters need an expert. When there's a celebrity matter coming up, divorce, romance, well, all those kind of things. Dr. Carol is just a great expert. I've called on her as a reporter, I know, in the past, and she has a new book called Bad Girls, Why Men Love Them and How Good Girls Can Learn Their Secrets. So if you're a good girl or a bad girl, stay tuned. So before Dottie joins us, I want to just say a few words about book covers in terms of if you're published by mainstream or if you self-publish. Book covers are a great example of one of the big differences between the kind of control that you will have as an author with a mainstream publisher or traditional publisher like Simon and Schuster or Hay House, somebody like that, where you don't pay to have the book published. So we're not talking self-publishing. So what happens? You give up control of the book cover. That is one thing that happens. With most of the traditional publishers, you can make suggestions, and it depends on whether the people are really cool in their art department and will listen to you. So you may have some input. It's not like you'll have none, but when you publish through mainstream, you give up certain rights in a way. The title is another thing that is going to be their determination. You can come in with a working title, and if it's a good title, they'll probably use it. But they have editorial boards that feel that they know best what's going to sell a book, and so ultimately, you do give them the power to create a title for you. Which can be a hassle for some authors. Same with the book cover. I mean, ultimately they can design the cover because they're concerned about what they feel is going to sell from their experience. So those are some of the things that you compromise on if you go mainstream. So there are always pros and cons to self-publishing. So cover control, title control, those are two big, real big ones. There's another kind of what I call a con to self-publishing that is a negative in the sense that you want to make sure if you do self-publish that you get a good edit, because editing is, I feel, is the most important thing in a self-published book. There's many self-published books that have absolutely gorgeous covers, but the minute you open the book, it's unreadable, unfortunately. I'm sure Dottie can attest to that. So, that's something that, if I had a certain amount of dollars to put into self-publishing, I would pretty much put them into getting a good editing job. And a lot of times you have to be careful with the print-on-demand companies, the POD companies, because you have to ask yourself, who's working for those companies? Are these private editors that are top editors, or are these people that perhaps are just starting out? Might be the first job after college. I've seen some pretty amazing edits, not so much in a good way, come out of things, companies like CreateSpace. So I would just say, be careful about, editing. Very important with a self-published book. if you go mainstream, you're going to end up with a near perfect product. They try to get it as perfect as it can be. It's going to be readable. It's going to be have a good edit. But one of the myths about mainstream, there's two really important myths that I find I run into as a book coach. And one of them is that they're going to give you great publicity. Because just because you're with a mainstream publisher doesn't mean that they are really going to do a publicity campaign for your book. You will get a publicist who will stay with you for a couple of weeks and do very perfunctory publicity, send the book out with a form letter, press release to various reviewers, to some talk show hosts, but you don't get targeted publicity. They're not going to follow up. They're not going to, because they don't have time. They've got 50 other authors that they have to do the same thing for. And so after this kind of 2-week honeymoon period, guess what? You're the one who's doing it yourself. So that's one of the things that can happen. It's a big surprise to many authors in mainstream. Unless you're an A-list celebrity, don't expect that you're going to get a fabulous publicity campaign. There are a few exceptions to that. Hay House does a pretty good job with their authors. They give them serious radio exposure. They give them all kinds of other opportunities to promote their books. But most publishers just don't have the resources or choose not to. And the other myth that I hear all the time is that if you go with a mainstream publisher, they can change the content of your book. And that's not really true. It's you, the author, that has the final say there. So just some things to think about. Self-publishing is really the way to go these days, in my opinion, because there are many advantages to it, but just make sure that you get a really good edit. That would be my best advice. So, Dottie, thanks so much for joining us. Everyone's real happy that you're here, as you can see. So you brought some of your book covers. How did you get into designing book covers? What started you on this?
Well, I have a background in publishing, and I was an art director for trade magazines for many years. And then while doing some freelance magazine work, somebody came to me with a book. He spoke on television for infomercials, and he needed a book for his infomercials on TV, and he also wanted to get the book in Barnes & Noble, and Barnes & Noble would not take the book because it was so poorly published. He had done it himself, and this was 15 years ago or longer, and so I actually did 3 books for him. And he got all 3 into Barnes & Noble, and that's how I got started.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, your book covers, when I first saw them, they look like they belong in Barnes & Noble. It's really hard to tell the difference. You've got some of them here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're really, you want to hold some more up?
Sure.
Yeah.
This is a little paperback, but it's, Rocket Your Life. Yeah. Wonderful title and a very colorful, grab it kind of cover.
Yeah.
And another one called Pens, a paperback. I also do, this is a how-to book. This is published by Nolo Press in San Francisco.
Right, the legal press.
Yeah, and it's won many awards. It's how to get your own divorce. And then I do 4-color tabletop and children's books, and which I brought a few here. Wonderful 4-color tabletop book. So
how do you read the book, or how do you come up with the concept for the cover?
I either read the book or I do a quick scan of the book. Sometimes I don't have time to read the whole book.
Yeah, it would be hard to read all the books.
Yeah, it's hard to read them all.
Yeah.
But I talk to the author personally. I get their concept of what they want. And then I go through the book and I make an agreement that I will do everything I can to give the author what the author's asking for. Then I'm going to do my own take on it. And so I'll give several front cover comps for the authors. And usually they end up choosing one that I did rather than trying to illustrate their idea.
They usually see that you know best.
Yeah, I think a big mistake that independent publishers make is they want to tell the whole story on the front cover. And the front cover is just an enticement to get you in. It's an enticement to open the book. So you want it to kind of pop out, grabbing a title that grabs, a cover, an image, and then the book is turned over and all the real estate's on the back cover.
Yeah, let's talk about the back cover because, designing the front cover, you're designing both, right?
Yes.
The front and back. Right. So what about back covers?
So I make a point to make the back cover agree with the front so that it moves, it turns. Like this little book pens.
Oh, maybe open it up, see if we can see both the front.
It's got a Chicago skyline there, and then on the back, I on the front is the Chicago skyline, and then I continue it on the back, and the colors continued. So you want it to feel like a nice, integrated, beautiful piece.
Yeah, and I noticed, can I see that second? I noticed on this just that this seems to have some, I like this design because it's very clear. It's not too crowded on the back cover.
No.
It seems like here there's very brief summary of the book to get you into it. And then here are 4 really short quotes.
Exactly.
Yeah, most people, do you find they want to put like long quotes on the back cover? Like
they do, and I edit them myself. I ask for permission because I worked in publishing and I used to edit copy a lot to the chagrin of many editors, but I was into making it look good.
Right, right. And it looks good when it's short. So I could tell just when you were holding it up over there. And then here's a nice picture of the author and a short bio.
Right.
So, but what I like about this back cover is, and there's the graphics that extend of the city, it's very balanced. It's very easy to read.
Yes.
I don't have to plow through it or anything. So this is really a lovely design for the back cover as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's also the point for the interior. I have seen so many books, even books published by big houses, where the point of the interior is that you open up the book, you don't think about the design, but there's a flow. As you're reading the book, and you go from page to page, and it feels comfortable. And there needs to be some breathing space. It should have a beautiful design in the cover. The title design is very important. The table of contents is important. And that gives you a feeling just as you start to move through the book, and the chapter heads. So there should be enough space between the lines that you can read and your eyes aren't strained. And I encourage authors to do their books on an off-white, not a white copy, because it's much easier to read.
Too glary if it's white.
That's right.
Yeah. So what are some of the mistakes, the common, I know you mentioned one before, but when you deal with independent authors, are there things that they sort of tell you over and over again that they want and you have to like talk them out of it?
Yes, they get very attached to certain ideas, or they will have someone in the family who's done an illustration and they're very attached to it.
My sister-in-law is this great artist, right?
Exactly. And it would be wrong of me to not discourage them. I have at times, I had an author who had an illustration that he had paid a lot of money and had it done over and over, and it was a vision as he saw it. And I let him talk me into using it on the front cover, and it was a big mistake. And since then, I won't do that. I make sure that I explain to them that it looks like loving hands at home by the family, and you want it professional.
Yeah, I never let people talk you into their visions.
That's right. Yes.
What else about the interior? Because I know I recently saw, in fact, yesterday, a book that Balboa Press put out, which is Hay Houses, P.O.D. And, oh, boy, it looked too crowded to me. There's not much thought in. I was surprised, actually. Do you see, like, people, what do they want? Like, maybe too much print together? Or, I mean, it's just like...
Well, sometimes they want to save money and not have as many pages.
That's what it is. They want to save money, right?
And so they want smaller type and less pages because it costs less. Not so much these days with the print on demand.
But not a good move at all.
Not a good move.
Yeah.
And when there's when it's a how-to book and there's a lot of information, there needs to be headers and some pullouts and some pull quotes. And
Yeah.
Because it's too much to digest. There's got to be some white space.
Kind of break the space up
Yeah.
Yeah.
I come from a background, I started out in fine art, and the negative space, we used to draw a negative space. It's just as important as the positive, I mean,
So what's negative space?
negative space is the breathing, where nothing is going on, where you can go and take a breath and move on to the next thing. But if you just jam everything, and sometimes you do that, there are times for everything, and there's rules to be broken, but in reading a book that's very difficult, that has a lot of, I have even gone in for authors and started pulling out pull quotes myself and creating headers and tell them, you've got to do this because it's too intense.
Wow. Well, that's excellent advice. I mean, because most designers won't do that, but because of your background in publishing, that's really great advice to do. To give them. So now, are there two different formats, like for ebooks and print, right? They need two different formats, right?
Well, the cover, if you're just doing an ebook and just want a cover for the ebook, if you're doing both, you don't want to have two different covers because the cover is is sort of the logo for the book.
Right.
That book is known by that cover.
Right.
So the ebook cover, the print cover is the same. But when ebooks, most of the time when people are searching for ebooks on Amazon, on wherever they're looking, they're little small icons, and you need to see the title. So I find now, when I'm designing a cover, I think more into having a title so that you can read the title, that it will pop, and that there's a good feeling about the front cover. Some of the most creative, artsy things are much more subtle, but it doesn't work so good with ebooks.
So there is a slight difference then in how you would conceptualize the cover, right?
Yes.
For an ebook. And what about now interior formatting? Of course, because I have clients, I tell them, well, just go to an ebook formatter, right?
Right.
But do you do both print and ebook formatting? Because it's different. You have to, right?
Yeah, the ebook, a lot of the design that I do is then removed in the ebook.
Right.
So it's all about undesign.
Right. Right.
But I have recently started doing what's called the fixed design ebooks.
Heard of those?
And
yeah.
It's exactly like the book. Unfortunately, it costs a lot more money.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It does, doesn't it? And I think that's going to be changing maybe over the next few years. But now there is a big difference between having a book with no photographs, no graphics. That's very, very inexpensive to get formatted. I mean, we had a formatter on the show. John Lowe charges between $35 and $50 for that. And you can always, if it's a long book, bring it in for under $100.
Yes.
But that's without. But why do photos and graphics add so much to
because
cost?
they have to stay with the text. So when you're reading an ebook, the reader can make it any size they want. And so when there's an image, a graph, it has to stay with the text, and it has to be expandable. So every image has to be handled and formatted in a certain HTML format that will make it work with the ebook. And especially if there's columns and pull quotes and things where the page splits, it's a lot.
So it's almost like designing a website, right? You have to sort of.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more work.
So we just have a couple minutes left here. Any tips that you would like to give authors? In other words, like to help them think of a concept for the cover? What should, like you say, they try to tell the whole story. They try to give too much information. That's interesting. How can they narrow that down so they're thinking cover concept? How should they think about how could they arrive at a concept?
Well, if an author's going to do the book himself,
come to you.
In
other words, so they don't come to you and go like, well, here's the whole book and I want it all on the cover. Like, how should they be thinking?
Well, I will explain it to them that you just want to get the feeling of the book, or just to feel what the book, a dynamic image, but it can't be so dynamic that it takes up there has to be space for the title. There has to be space for the author.
So go for the feeling of the book more than
feeling.
trying to tell the whole story on the cover.
Yeah, you don't try to tell the whole story. I don't know that I have any. Well, this book,
That's a very powerful cover.
Rocket Your Life, has a lot of energy to it.
Right.
As does the title, Rocket Your Life, had a lot of energy. So
that's a good example, actually, because when you held that up, I thought that's a very compelling cover. That would make me want to find out what that book's about.
And then you turn it over and you find out. So, but yes.
Right. So think of the feeling of the book, think what kind of energy the book is expressing, sort of think in those terms before you talk to your book designer and tell her that, right?
Well, yes. Or what I will say is the reason you hired me is so you don't have to think about it.
Or you don't want to
let me do it for you.
Yeah, or let them do it for you, right. What I mean is don't argue with your book designer.
That's right. I do much better when they just let me do it.
Right, right.
And they end up much happier.
That's good. How can people get in touch with you?
They can find me on my website. It's www.dotdesign.net, or telephone me, or my email is Dottie, D-O-T-T-I, at dotdesign.net.
Okay, Dottie and .design, we can remember that.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being with
Jean-Noel.
us. So stick around because we have Janine Macklin on the show, and she has a book called Let's Get You Happy First, which I think is a wonderful idea. I really do. And she faced so many challenges in her life. She had to figure out how to do that herself. If you are facing any kind of challenge or crisis in your life right now, stay tuned because Jeanette has got some wonderful advice and information to share with you. This is the Book Beat. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior, and we're here on LA Talk Live, more than just talk.
Hi, this is Burness Heron inviting you to join me every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for our all-new show, The Mortgage Show. Join us as we discuss exclusive new products and programs through government and conventional financing. No mortgage-related topics are spared. Come with me through this journey of informative, stimulating conversation, giving you the facts, clarity, and insight you deserve. You never heard a mortgage show like this before. You'll be enlightened, educated at the same time. This is for the community, for the nation, for everyone. As the industry evolves, we evolve. So don't forget to tune into The Mortgage Show, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, exclusively on latalklive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B, or just watch us on Ustream TV, reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we're more than just talk.
Hi, this is Starlet Quarles, and I'm inviting you to join us every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. for a new show right here on LA Talk Live, The Dialogue, Real Talk, Real People. Join us as we discuss the topics that are relevant to today's generational leaders. So don't forget to tune in to The Dialogue, Real Talk, Real People, every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. right here on latalklive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, and now Stitcher Radio. Or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Book Beat. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior, and we have Janine Macklin. If I said Jeanette before, I'm so sorry. Janine Macklin in studio with us. Do you want to be called Reverend Janine? Or
no, Janine is
just
fine.
Janine, is that fine?
Yeah,
okay, because I know you
Yes.
are a Reverend, right?
Yes, I am.
You are a transformational coach, speaker, and author of Let's Get You Happy First, 4 Steps to Get You to Your Happy. And
Yes.
I love what you say about your mission is to inspire people to fall in love with themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
That's an excellent
Yes.
idea. How can we fall in love with ourselves?
At first I want to say if we stop criticizing ourselves, but let
Yeah.
me start on the other side to say
Yeah.
if we say more positive things to ourselves, if we're more gentle with ourselves, if we can become our best friend, our coach, allow ourselves to champion ourselves, that would be a good start for
Yeah,
us.
because I'm very familiar with this book because I edited it.
Yes, you did.
So I'm kind of
Yay.
prejudiced here. But I love the way what you did was you really laid amazing groundwork in this book because you talk about how we're conditioned, how we, all the messages that we get, right?
Right.
What happens to us when we're children? What kind of messages do we get that get us into this space where, I mean, it's like the last thing we do is love ourselves, right?
Oh, absolutely. We get so many messages. I've been talking about this so much that I'm really excited because we get messages about ourselves, how we think about ourselves, how we feel about ourselves. We get messages about our health. We get messages about money. We get messages about our abilities, our capacity.
Yeah.
And we're just in it, and we get it by osmosis in a sense because we're in the room and breathing the air.
Yeah.
And we don't really think that at some point we may want to challenge that. Look at those statements that we're holding to realize, are they really true? Is that what I really think about myself? Is that what I really feel? And then be willing to question it and update it. Because most often there's a lot of 8 and 9-year-olds that's running around in the world in charge of our finances, in charge of our relationships, in charge of many of the things in our lives because we haven't changed that programming.
Yeah, they're stuck in that's age level, aren't they?
We're in that programming that we received. And, you've heard that story where the daughter is fixing the turkey a particular kind of way and the husband questions it, and then they get to the mother and they question the mother and they get to the grandmother and she says, well, it didn't fit in the pan. So she had a legitimate reason for why she cut the tail off the turkey, but all the other times it was just, well, my mom did it. My mom did it. And she didn't question, why am I doing this? How come I'm saying these things to myself?
And there's so many things that we repeat that we do because our parents did it or our grandparents, So you do such a great job of laying that groundwork in the book. But so do you feel like it's very important to start there and really understand, the conditioning and the programming that you've had? Is that the first step to unraveling this? Or what is the first step?
I think so. As you put it like that, I really do. It's probably one of the second pieces in there because the first thing I talk about is getting a sense of your worth and value because so much of our sense of worth and who we are is external to us. It's based on what we do, the cars we drive, our accomplishment, the titles that we have. So when you strip all that away, what's left? And it's recognizing our worth and value isn't contingent upon our circumstances or defined by our experiences. So that's usually where I have a start because we're spending so much time looking outside. So then when we get to the programming, we can begin to start to look inward because I've already laid that framework to say, now that you understand this and recognize this, let's look inside and see what else could be interfering with your being happy and loving yourself more.
So how do we take that first step then? How do we get to the worth and the value? How do we see that with all this other stuff that's been overlaid?
Usually there's a transition that's happening. There's a tug that's been going on for some time and we've been ignoring it. We just run out of energy. We find ourselves on empty. It's particularly women a lot because we've been giving and giving. And then one day we wake up and we just realize we just don't have anything else to give. And for many, there begins an inward, a looking inward to say, okay, so what else is there to life besides this? I thought it would be the family. I thought it would be the car or the children. What else is there? And that questioning then opens us up to look at other things and other possibilities. At least that's the way it was for me. But I knew that tug was there and I had been ignoring it.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because I know that you really hit the wall, right?
Right.
What happened? What was the low point?
I had been in a relationship for a period of time and I had been ignoring the signs. I had felt it. And you get everything, in a nice, neat place, and I'd gotten there and it's like, no, I can't. You can't be telling me I have to change this or this isn't enough or that this didn't make me happy. And there's so much fear around it and people call us selfish. That's what I heard, or you're selfish if you think about yourself or you have to think about everyone else first. And so when you have so much
it's really, I guess, the programming pushing against you. It's really hard to say, well, no, I'm really clear that, as I always tell clients when I'm working with them, if I put the oxygen mask on myself first, and I breathe in some fresh air and continue to take those breaths, I'm going to be a better person, a better female, a better woman, a better businesswoman, a better wife, a better mother, a better coach, a better everything for everyone else. But I really will have to, I've tried everything else that didn't work. I'll try this.
You were getting a lot of negative messages, and then I remember there was some family stuff about things weren't the way you'd actually thought they were when you were growing up. Shock, right?
Oh yes, because that was in my mid 30s
Yeah.
when after that point my mother had made her transition. She was the last one in her generation, and there were little quiet comments. Oh, well, she's not your mom, or that's not your house. And I thought, well, what are you talking about? And it was really when I went to the passport office to get my passport.
Yeah, right.
That's what, and I put my passport on the table, the application on the table, the check on the table, and I'm standing there all excited, going to London, mixed emotions, missing my mom and wanting her to be there, but needing to get away. For the gentleman to say to me, well, this isn't an authentic birth certificate. I thought, excuse me? What do you mean? Yes, this is it. And so that really kind of cracked it open, and I stayed there, and I went back to that window and said, yes, it is my passport and it is my birth certificate. And they were able to give me one. But when I left, I had to go home and say, okay, so what's really going on?
Yeah, what's the real family story here?
What's the real story? And there were only a few people left to be able to say, well, we're not sure, but as far as we understand that there was an adoption that took place, but everybody loved you, your mom loved you. And I thought, okay, I understand that, but what happened? So that also began to challenge the sense of worth and value and significance and all of that.
Yeah, didn't that have to, in a way, make you question who you were on so many levels?
It did. It really did.
Yeah.
And in my way of looking at it, I remember I pushed back from everyone. I didn't really want to talk to anyone. And I turned inward again. And then I began to just kind of look around. I thought, you know what? Hers, not hers, I don't know who, but I know she put up with me. She disciplined me. She loved me. She went to bat for me. I claimed her and said, you know what? That's my mom, and that's my dad, and this is my family.
You had
just moved on from there.
Yeah, you had a lot of forgiving to do, didn't you?
Oh, I did. I really did. Because no one had said it, and it was such a secret. How do you keep a family secret that well for so many years?
That's amazing.
But my mother was powerful in the family, and I guess people knew don't cross her.
Yeah. So how did that? I almost felt reading the book that you kind of had to fall apart and reconstruct yourself again.
I did.
Did it feel like that?
It really did. It's like I fell apart because of what I thought it had been all those years, and then said, okay, now put it back together and what that's going to look like for you. And I really felt like I got to decide and define what that was going to look like.
Yeah, you took the power at that point, didn't
Right.
you? I got to decide and define, right? Because
Right.
I know a lot of your Take Action Now exercises in the book seem to bring people to that point, right? Where they
Right.
can do exactly that.
Right, because so many things may have happened in our experiences, and we've allowed them to define what's going to be and who we are and our value. If it's sexual abuse, if it's violations, if it's rape, if it's divorce, we allow that to define us as opposed to saying, no, I'm going to define what this means for me or what it's not going to mean. And it took me a long time to get to that.
Yeah, it did. And then also you talk about your relationship with a force like, the cosmic force, the universe, right? What about how did you connect with that greater force that seems so essential to being happy, to finding our happy?
It really is, because it's about finding an aspect of life and you that's bigger than you. So when those circumstances happen and there's no mom anymore and there's no grandmother, it's like there's got to be something else bigger. I was writing an article recently on the invisible cloak that moms put on you or parents put on you. You don't realize it until they're no longer here. And then when that's no longer there, you really do have to tap into something bigger. But that kind of introduced me to it a little bit growing up. When I was about 13, I had become aware of my intuition. My mother had always said to me, she simply just said, don't you? I would call her and I'd say, Mama, you're not feeling well. What's going on? She said, oh, yeah, you always know, huh? So it gave me this sense that there's something that I'm knowing that they're not talking about in church. No one's talking about anywhere else. But this knowing is kind of guiding me, giving me information, and she would just confirm it. And I just began to really listen to that off and on. It wasn't until the later years that I really began to step into that as a part of me.
Your
and a part of life.
inner GPS, she kind of validated that, right?
Right, she did.
Yeah.
Right, but she never said a whole lot. She just said, and I would just follow through on that.
So in getting to our happy, I mean, what are some of the first steps that we can take? Because it sounds like we have to deal with some of these old messages and replace them with some new messages, right?
Yes, we do. Well, the first thing I'm finding out is we have to really want to be happy. Because the more I talk to people about happy, it's like, well, when I get my money, I'll be happy. When I get this, I'll be happy. As opposed to allowing ourselves to be in that state of being first, and then from that, everything else will come.
So it's first being in that general state of being, right?
Right.
Rather than focusing on the specifics, like I want this, I want that.
Right. Because when we get that, we want the next this or that as soon as we get it. So it doesn't last. So it's really about being willing to step into an energy, a way of being and thinking and feeling that no matter how the landscape changes outside of us in the world, which is continuously changing, we have this place where we're centered within or connected within.
Now, how do we find that place?
There we are, turning within again. We know that place, though. I'm convinced we know that place. There are moments when answers come to us. There's moments when we think of someone and they call or the phone rings. There are nudges and information that we get along the way and we kind of discount it.
So pay attention.
So now we want to pay attention to
it.
We want to start paying attention to that. We want to start asking questions about the beliefs that we have to really see, is that what we really believe about ourselves? And recognize you've heard it and it's true. Our thoughts do have power, that there's an energy to them. And we can manage our lives when we manage our thoughts.
Well, this is really about changing our thinking, isn't it?
It really is.
Thoughts are the key.
It really is. Yeah. It really is. Because even putting the oxygen mask on yourself first is changing the thought to recognize that you're valuable, and how just amazing you'll be when you do that in your service to whoever it is, your family, your business, friends.
So these take action steps, see, that's what I like about the book, is so you give us quick things we can do now, right?
Right.
Like, can you think of an example? I know it might put you on the spot a little, but do you remember one?
Well, one of the things that comes to mind really around the sabotaging beliefs. I ask people to take a week and monitor your thoughts. Glamour did a survey 3 or 4 months ago that said women had 97% of our thoughts are negative, 100 thoughts a day. So I said, let's be conscious. Let's be aware of this and pay attention. Write your thoughts down. Become mindful of them. And then after you've written those thoughts down for that week, then just sit with them and write the opposite positive true thoughts to those thoughts. Tear the paper in half, throw the other thoughts away, and then begin to allow these thoughts to be what you begin to think to yourself. Because you're the only one that's thinking those thoughts to yourself. I'm not attractive. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. So you get to replace those with other thoughts.
That's a really good suggestion, actually, because that's making our thoughts kind of visible so we can see them.
Right.
And tangible, putting them on the paper. And then I like the actual act of throwing part of the half of that paper away is sounds like that would really get the message across physiologically,
Right, because they no longer serve us. And it's not just our conscious. We're really looking more deeply into our subconscious that's really kind of navigating everything, and we're not really paying attention to the power of our subconscious. So we can tear that off, burn it, put it to the side, and begin to focus. I tell people, program your thoughts, program your thinking. Our mind is like a computer. It's amazing. We get to tell it what to think, as opposed to just having it run on old tapes.
Yeah, and in this book, that is the thing I noticed, that, you put this in everyday language for people because, and I've a lot of these are very sound, metaphysical principles that are around, but you put it, you really bring it down into everyday life and language that we can understand, that's really simple, and you break it down really beautifully in the book.
Well, thank you. That was my hope for those who weren't sure about the secret and the law of attraction.
Exactly.
Here's just some simple ways to begin to look at things and think differently in your life and about yourself.
Yeah. So how can people get in touch with you?
At my website, www.JanineMacklin.com.
Let's spell that out,
I'm going to say, my mother was wonderful with this name, so let me spell it. JeNennenne MACKLIN.
Okay.
Or they can call me, the 310-978-7133 or www.getyouhappy.com.
And the name of the book is?
Let's Get You Happy First.
Let's
4
get
steps to get you to your happy.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being with us and coming back.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Popular demand. So stay tuned, everyone, because we have Dr. Carol Lieberman is, with us. She's going to join us, and she is the go-to media expert for a lot of celebrity stories that you read about. And her new book is Bad Girls, Why Men Love Them and How Good Girls Can Learn Their Secrets. So stay tuned, because let's see if you're a good girl, if you can become a bad girl. Stay tuned here at LA Talk Live, where we're more than just talk.
Hello, this is Angela DeJoseph. Join me Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. Pacific for the Angela DeJoseph Show. Join me as we venture into health, wealth. We're going to give you news, interviews, and entertainment. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, Live 365, Radio Flag, TiVo Radio, and now live on Facebook. Or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Dawn Christie inviting you to join me every Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific, for my all-new show, The Dawn Christie Show. Join me as I discuss love, spiritual readings, your purpose, why am I born, what am I here to do. So don't forget to tune in The Dawn Christie Show at 1 p.m. Pacific, exclusively on LA Talk Live. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV, reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Book Beat. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior, and I have here in studio with me Dr. Carol Lieberman, who is a psychiatrist, real doctor. And you are a very well-known Beverly Hills therapist. I certainly have seen your name in print through the years over and over again. And working as a reporter doing celebrity interviews myself, I know that you are the expert that we call on for all these stories. So I follow your comments and always want to know what you have to say about the latest celebrity gossip. So, but you have a book out now called Bad Girls. And let me just get the title here. Why Men Love Them and How Good Girls Can Learn Their Secrets. And I remember your previous book, because I remember when Bad Boys came out, and that was Bad Boys, Why We Love Them, How to Live with Them, and When to Leave Them.
Right.
So about Bad Girls, you were mentioning, we were talking before the show about Kate and William, and an example of how she used certain bad girl techniques to...
Yes, well, obviously, Kate, is in the news these days. We're all waiting to hear about when her baby is coming.
Right.
And I talk about how she is the quintessential good girl who used bad girl secrets to catch her prince. And one of the secrets that I talk about is that there was a college, they both went to the same college, and there was an annual college charity fashion show. And she chose to wear this it was actually supposed to be a skirt, but she wore it as a dress, and it was see-through. And she marched down the aisle and looked very confident and very sexy, of course, in the dress. And that was the moment that Prince William decided to change how he felt towards her. She was sort of an acquaintance before then, but all of a sudden, instead of just being a platonic friend, he then was hot for her. And in fact, he turned to his friend and he said, "She's hot."
Oh.
So in my book,
yeah, hold it up.
Yes, okay. In my book, Bad Girls.
Yeah.
Why Men Love Them and How Good Girls Can Learn Their Secrets. I talk about, first of all, let me define what I mean by a bad girl.
Yeah, let's find, what is a bad girl?
Because I don't mean like a tramp or, although some of the bad girls actually use some of that to their advantage or try to. But what is a woman who has had a dysfunctional relationship with her father. It starts out growing up. And her father could have been someone very very severely dysfunctional, such as being abusive to her, physically or sexually abusive on one extreme. But then the other extreme is just a father who may not be around physically or emotionally, just not be there for her. Of course, the most typical problem that we have today is because there are so many divorces,
right.
Fathers are just not around, they're divorced.
So is she left kind of with certain feelings about men, right?
Well, she's left feeling unlovable. She's left feeling as though her prince will never come.
I see.
And in my first book, Bad Boys, as you brought up, I talk about these women who have these dysfunctional relationships with their father, and depending upon what kind of relationship that is, she is attracted to a certain type of bad boy. And so I define 12 different types of bad boys in my first book, and I define 12 different types of bad girls in this one. And of course, they're different types.
Yeah, you have some sex siren, addict, husband stealer, commitment phobe.
Yes, gold digger,
yeah.
sexual withholder, married woman on the prowl, the commitment phobe. Yes, that's the only one that's the same in both of them. The husband hunter and trapper, the husband stealer, the ultimate damsel in distress, the cougar, the ball buster, and the bad girl scorned. Jodi Arias is an example of the bad girl scorned. So,
what's your favorite one? What's
Well, I call myself a recovering bad girl. I fit into a number of the categories, or in the past, right? But so what happens is these women get attracted to the girls who have had these dysfunctional relationships with their father, where they don't feel loved or lovable, are attracted to bad boys, and then when they get hurt by one or more bad boys, they reach a crossroads, and they either sort of pack it all in and hide out in their house and really harden their heart about they don't want to take a risk on another relationship because they're afraid of being hurt like they were with these one or more bad boys, or they become a bad girl, one of these types, meaning that they've given up on hoping that their prince will come, but instead they figure that they will exploit men for something. So each of these types are exploiting the women exploit the man for something. So like the obvious one, the gold digger, she doesn't feel that she's going to get love, so she pretends to herself that this man's gold, his credit cards and his money and his luxury lifestyle will be just as good as if she were loved. And of course, the guys who fall for these bad girls...
It takes two, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly. Just like with the bad boys and the women who fall for them. But the guys who fall for any of these types of women, I call sitting ducks. And there are certain qualities in them that make them more vulnerable to falling for a woman who pretends to be madly in love with them, but really she's after these specific things.
Yeah, I was reading a little bit from your book on Amazon, and I think you said something interesting about a man may not feel he's worth something unless he attracts one of these bad girls because they tend to go, if he's.
You're putting it nicely. Actually, I think I said, or I say in the book in any case, these bad girls know how to make a man feel as though he's the biggest stud on the planet. And so, for each of these types of bad girls, each chapter I describe what makes this woman tick, why she became that way, like more specifically about her childhood. And then the men, why specific types of men based on their childhood are attracted to each of these types of women. And then, of course, I give some celebrity examples of, actually, I interviewed over 100 men for this.
Yeah.
And I have some of the best stories, men who have been involved with these types of women.
And what was that like? What is your favorite story from that?
Well, the most interesting part of that was that, and I interviewed these men for 3 and 4 hours at a time, and they really got into very intimate details, not only sexually intimate, but emotionally intimate.
Well, you're a psychiatrist. They could trust you,
right? Well, yes. So what I found the most interesting is that even though, like, the men were all different ages, and they came from all over, mostly the United States, and they had all different types of jobs and all different backgrounds, and yet, and so some of the stories that they would tell about their bad girl experience, for some of them, it was years ago. Mm-hmm. Some of them were still with a bad girl, but for some of them it was years ago. And even for those where it was years ago, when they would tell the story, their voice would change. They would you could hear how hurt they still are, even though this happened years ago. And they remembered things, what she was wearing, what she said, what great details, because they were so hurt.
Do you think that these men had something going on with their mothers that would put them in this?
Well, yes. I mean, it has to do with their mothers and their fathers. Their mothers, either it was one extreme or the other. Either they were a mama's boy, and so they were used to taking orders, So
they wanted a domineering kind of woman?
They wanted to please a woman, like they did when they were a mama's boy. Like they wanted to feel, they wanted to believe that this woman felt that way about them too. Or they had a mother who was either emotionally distant or emotionally or physically distant. And they were so needy of a woman's attention and affection and so on that they would take anything. And also another interesting, surprising part was that a lot of the men, I mean, there was these patterns, and one of the patterns was that they had fathers who were missing, who were either physically or emotionally not there.
So they probably didn't get a sense of self-esteem, right?
Exactly. Yeah. They didn't get a sense of their manhood. They didn't get valued as men. And, of course, there were some practical things they were missing, like their daddies didn't tell them which women you sleep with and which women you marry. But it was this sense of not being validated as a man, and then having a woman who is able to do that for you.
Now, you said something interesting. Some of them were still hurting, and others were still with the bad girl, you said, right?
Yes.
How was that working out?
Well, if they were contacting me to tell me their bad girl story. Well, like, for example, one of them was with the ball buster type, and he was still with her. And but as I could just hear as he was telling me all these different examples, I would ask them how they met, and we would go through the whole relationship. And as he was telling one story after another of all these things that she did to him, I could just hear him, becoming more and more decided that he was going to leave her, which, he eventually, he was planning. I mean, he supposedly had told her that he was thinking of doing, but she was, trying to keep him around by saying she couldn't find an apartment, or, these bad girls have wonderful ways of manipulating the men.
Yeah. So you say that a good girl, though, could learn something. What can good girls learn from these bad girls' secrets?
Well, I'm not trying to turn good girls into bad girls, but there were certain things that bad girls did from sort of an obvious one of making the most of their looks.
Kate William kind of thing.
Well, I mean, yes. Well, actually, that's another one. Another secret dress. I have her under because she did everything. She did everything she could, and look where we are now.
So they make them make most of their looks, kind of.
Well, yes, but I mean, it's it's. I mean, not there. Of course, you have to. There's the stereotype, the Barbie stereotype,
right?
That men buy into as much as women, and not everybody is going to be able to turn themselves into Barbie, nor should they. But most women can certainly do a lot more than they typically are doing with themselves. And the more they've been hurt by men in the past, the less likely they're gonna work on doing the most they can with themselves. But then there are other things like strategies and so on. And what I try to do, as I said, not to turn good girls into bad girls, but we have been sold such a bill of goods that all you have to do is to have a good heart, be a good woman. Your prince is going to come. He's going to fall at your feet. That ain't happening. And there are lots of women out there who are very confused and disappointed and disgruntled and wondering, well, I did everything right. I mean, look at all these. I've made myself appealing and all.
I've got a good career going. I take care of my looks. I'm things like that. I've done all the right things.
Well, but not in the way that bad girls do. Not in a. There's a kind of faux confidence, a kind of false confidence. Like even Kate. It took a lot of she had a good parent. She had a good relationship with her father, which was key. But walking down the runway at a fashion show, wearing practically nothing, a see-through dress with black underwear, in Scotland, but in the UK, was really taking a huge
that was a big
risk.
Yeah.
She was a freshman. I mean, this was a big deal. And bad girls, again, I said she was the quintessential good girl who used bad girl secrets, just to clarify. But bad girls, because they've been so hurt and they've been made to feel unlovable, you would think they would be the least likely people to appear confident. But it's because they've taken their heart off their sleeve. And they're not looking, they're not talking about relationships. They're not putting it out there. They're not making the guy, scaring the guy off by showing him from the very beginning, I'm looking for a relationship. They're able to have this kind of looks like confidence, cockiness, able to flirt in a way that a good girl would feel too vulnerable to do.
So are these some of the things like flirting, perhaps, or like if you're like a good girl, you've never thought of yourself as a bad girl, what's some little thing that would be kind of safe that you could start with? What would be like the first step, where you don't feel like, okay, I've got black underwear on and it's sheer and I'm walking down, but if you don't go that far, what would you do that would be
well,
safer?
Okay, I'll give you, there are lots, I call them the bad girl secrets to a man's heart, and there are lots of them. But I'll give you, one example. You kind of have to put them all together. But one example would be to wear, a lot of women go shopping and they'll buy something that, is a little out of their comfort zone. Like, let's say a boa, or dangling earrings that are very kind of sexy. And they'll buy them and they'll put them in their drawer and they'll never wear them. They're all extremes. The boa is at one extreme.
Been there, done that.
And so if you wear something, it doesn't have to be like doesn't have to be a totally low cut, blouse where your boobs are hanging out, but you should dress up the package some. But if you wear something, if you're not up to that step yet, and you want to wear something that might start a conversation, like you wear some kind of even a T-shirt that has some writing on it that might give a guy an opening to start asking you about that. And something like
kind
that.
Kind of a low risk fashion statement.
Right, exactly. But there are some of the strategies, I talk about that. I sort of summarize those.
Yeah.
But in the stories, the women, of the bad girls, and how they got their guy. You can kind of see some of these things in action. It's but the real key is making the guy feel like the biggest stud on the planet, and putting this fake it till you make it as far as confidence.
That's actually, I think in high school, if we go back and think back to high school, if we think of bad girls, they did have that kind of brashness, that confidence. They did things that we were, too scared to do.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm not telling people, yes, did some of the bad girls sleep with the man on the first date to hook them into the relationship? Yes. I'm not suggesting that people necessarily do that. That can actually backfire. But you have to put yourself out there in this. You have to take this vulnerability and just kind of hide it away for a bit, and just kind of be out there to have the fun, or be out there to make friendships at least. It's you can't look needy, you can't look desperate, which is what so many women do. So you have to kind
of find, like, we're taking the best of the things that bad girls do. We're just kind of putting some kind of spin on it that's not, it's going to work for us in a positive
Yes,
way.
That's what I suggest. Right. When you read all these stories and you read all the bad girl secrets, you start with what feels comfortable to you.
Right. And if you go too far, we have a psychiatrist here you can call who will get you out of, any mess you get in, right? How can people contact you?
Well, they can go to my the website that I have for the book. It's called www.badgirlsbook.com. And also I have a free Bad Girls test and a free sitting duck test. The sitting duck test for the men, the Bad Girls test for the women, that are in the first chapter of my book. You can also get it on my website.
Excellent. So that sounds like a good weekend project. If you're, want something new, go to check out Dr. Carol's website and her book. And by Monday morning, come into the office and you will be people will wonder what you did over the weekend.
That's right.
So thanks for joining us. Please tune in next week. And these shows are archived at LA Talk Live. We'll be here next week, same time, same station, here at The Book Beat on LA Talk Live, where we are always more than just talk.
Thank you for tuning into LA Talk